The Long Beach Memorial Sports Arena seated exactly 9,847 people that Saturday evening in August of 1964. Every seat was taken. Standing room along the back wall had been claimed since noon. The smell of liniment oil and sawdust moved through the corridors in slow currents, and the overhead lights burned at a heat that raised the surface temperature of the exhibition floor to 96 degrees. Outside on Figueroa Street, the summer evening moved at its own pace. Cars passed. A delivery truck idled at a light. The city had no idea what was about to happen inside. He was sitting in the 7th row. He was not in a corner seat. He was not near an exit. He was seated in the middle of a row, surrounded by strangers, wearing a plain white shirt with the sleeves rolled once to the forearm, dark slacks, and leather shoes that had not been polished that morning. He was 23 years old. He weighed 135 pounds. His program rested in his lap, unread. His hands were flat on his knees. He was watching the floor of the arena with the particular patience of a man who has already decided what the evening means and does not need to be told. Nobody around him knew who he was. The man who was about to learn his name did not know it either. In exactly 38 seconds, in front of 10,000 witnesses, a full-contact karate champion with a 4-year undefeated record would walk to the center of that exhibition floor, take the microphone from a tournament official, and say 4 words that would be repeated for the next 6 decades. He would say them loudly, and he would say them with the total confidence of a man who had earned the right to confidence through 200 competitive bouts without a loss. He would not be lying. He was not a fraud. He was, by any honest measure, one of the most dangerous men in that building. Nobody in that arena knew they were about to witness the most important public demonstration in the history of martial arts. Not the promoters, not the official in the 3rd row with the clipboard, not the man sitting 7 seats to the left of Bruce Lee who was eating roasted peanuts from a paper bag, not the young woman beside her who would write in her journal that night, in sentences she could not make coherent, that she had watched something happen that she did not have the vocabulary to name. What they were about to see would be argued about, retold, revised, and inherited across 40 years of dojo floors and training camps and late-night conversations between serious men who had given their lives to this art. And it would begin with an insult. His name was Raymond Delaney. He was 27 years old, 5 feet 11 inches tall, and 186 pounds at his measured competition weight that morning. He had won his first national tournament at age 19. He had competed in 214 sanctioned bouts since then and had not lost a single one. Not one. Not a decision, not a point, not a single judge's notation in the margin of a scoring sheet that suggested anything other than total and accelerating mastery. He had trained under 2 separate national champions. He had spent 7 months in Japan studying Kyokushin karate under instructors who did not allow students who could not break concrete. He had broken concrete. In his weight and age division, he was not considered the favorite to win. He was considered the fact. He was also, by the account of 6 people who knew him well and 4 who did not, a man who had a precise understanding of the distance between his ability and the ability of everyone else he had ever encountered, and a limited interest in concealing that understanding. He had read about the young man from Hong Kong in a martial arts newsletter 3 weeks before the Long Beach tournament. The article had been brief. It described, in somewhat breathless terms, a 23-year-old Wing Chun practitioner who had been demonstrating his method at small venues up and down the California coast. The language of the article was enthusiastic in a way that Delaney found. Reading it at his kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, professionally irritating. He had set the newsletter on the table. He had drunk the rest of his coffee. Then he had looked out his kitchen window at the street and thought about it for a while. He told a training partner 2 days later in the locker room of a gym in Van Nuys that he intended to say something at Long Beach. His training partner asked what he intended to say. Delaney thought about it for a moment and said he had not decided the exact words yet, but he knew the shape of them. He arrived at the Long Beach Arena at 9:30 in the morning and did not leave until his name was called that evening. He spent the day in the same way he always spent competition days, methodically, without waste. He watched the other competitors. He ate at noon. He stretched in the corridor near the locker room for 40 minutes at 3 in the afternoon in a way that several people stopped to observe. because his flexibility was a specific and remarkable thing to look at. He was the last man to be called to the floor before the exhibition demonstrations began. He won his bout in 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Then he picked up the microphone. The tournament official had set it on a stand near the center of the floor. It was meant for announcements between events. Delaney walked toward it without hurrying. He did not ask anyone for permission. He was the kind of man who understood, from long practice, the mechanics of a room. And he understood that in this room, at this moment, nobody was going to stop him. He had earned the right, in that room's logic, to take a floor and speak. He adjusted the microphone stand with one hand, he looked out at the 10,000 people arranged in their rows and tiers, and he waited the particular beat of a second that a man waits when he wants the room to quiet before he speaks. Then he said, "There is a man here tonight who teaches something he calls a martial art. I have read about him. I would like for him to come down to this floor and show me what he does. Because from what I have read, I do not believe any man alive could survive one round against a real fighter using a method like his." He said it evenly. He did not raise his voice past the level required by the room. He was not performing anger. He was performing certainty, which is a different and more dangerous thing. He set the microphone back on its stand and stepped away from it and stood with his arms at his sides and looked out at the rows of people. There was a silence of approximately 3 seconds. Then, the 10,000 people in the Long Beach Memorial Sports Arena began to move and whisper and turn in their seats with the specific energy that moves through a crowd when something is happening that was not on the schedule. If you want to know what happened next, make sure you are subscribed and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. Because this story is not finished, the young man in the 7th row did not immediately stand. He sat for a moment with his hands flat on his knees and his program still in his lap, and he looked at the man standing in the center of the exhibition floor with the particular expression of a man who is measuring something, not reacting to it. People around him were turning, speaking, pointing. The energy in the section was loud. He was quiet inside it. He stood up without hurry. He was not a tall man. In the 7th row, rising, he was not immediately visible to the sections above. But the people in his row and the rows immediately around him became aware of him in a way that is difficult to describe unless you have been in the presence of someone who carries themselves as though the space they occupy is exactly sufficient and they have no need of more. There was no performance in how he stood. There was simply the fact of it. He removed his jacket. He folded it once along the seam and set it on the seat of his chair. He did not look at it after he set it down. He moved along the row with a brief, genuine courtesy to the people he passed, and he walked to the top of the aisle and down toward the exhibition floor. The recognition began, as it always did, at the front rows first. A tournament official 3 seats from the front wall looked up. His face did not immediately change. Then it did. He put his hand on the arm of the man beside him. That man turned and looked. A judo instructor named Harold Yamada, who had competed on the West Coast circuit for 11 years and who had watched hundreds of men walk toward a competition floor, said later that he knew from the walk. Not from the face. He knew from the walk, and from the particular economy of it, that this was not a man who was going to be embarrassed. He said he put both hands flat on the table in front of him, like a man bracing, though he could not say against what. The recognition moved through the arena in a wave, row by row, the way a current moves underwater, beneath the surface, invisible from above, but real and directional. By the time Bruce Lee reached the exhibition floor, a significant portion of the 10,000 people in that building understood that something was happening which the program had not promised them. He has already lost. He just does not know it yet. Bruce Lee stopped 9 feet from Raymond Delaney. Not 10 feet, not 8, 9 feet, which is inside awareness and outside easy striking range, and the choice of that distance was its own statement to anyone who understood the grammar of it. He stood with his hands at his sides. He did not adopt a stance. He did not shift his weight. He looked at Delaney with an expression that a reporter present that night would later describe inadequately as calm, and then correct himself privately to something more precise, not calm but complete. He said, "All right, show me. A fight is not two men trying to hit each other. That is the surface of it, the way that the surface of water is the least interesting thing about the ocean. A fight is a negotiation about distance. It is a conversation, conducted in fractions of a second, about who controls the geometry of the space between two bodies, and what the consequences of that control are going to be. Every technique, every movement, every stillness is a sentence in that conversation. And the man who wins is almost never the man who speaks the loudest. He is the man who has made the other man believe he is standing on ground that is solid, when in fact there is nothing beneath it. Raymond Delaney understood distance. He had built his record on that understanding. He moved first, which was his habit and his right as the man who had issued the invitation. He moved well. That must be said, because it is true and because the truth of it is part of what makes what happened next worth understanding. He did not lunge. He did not overcommit. He advanced with the measured precision of a man who has done this 200 times and knows the distance at which his technique becomes lethal. He kept his hands in correct position. His weight was properly distributed. There was nothing in his approach that an experienced observer would have marked as a flaw. He threw a lead hand jab at the level of Bruce Lee's face. This is second one. The jab did not arrive. It did not arrive not because it was blocked, and not because it was parried in the conventional sense of a forearm crossing to deflect. It did not arrive because the target had moved, and the specific nature of that movement requires a sentence of its own. Bruce Lee slipped the jab at its origin rather than at its trajectory. He moved his head 4 inches to the right and 2 inches backward, which sounds modest, and which was, in execution, almost invisible to the naked eye at 20 feet. It was not a flinch. It was not a reactive escape. It was a prepared and deliberate repositioning that had begun, by all expert analysis conducted afterward, before Delaney's shoulder had completed its forward rotation. He had known it was coming before it was thrown. In the third row, directly to the left of the tournament officials' table, a man named Victor Santos set down his coffee cup. He had been a competitive welterweight boxer for 6 years before becoming a stunt coordinator for a studio in Burbank. He had, in those 6 years, thrown and received approximately 40,000 jabs in training and competition. He said later that he had never, not once, seen a man slip a jab that early. He said that he had set the coffee cup down not as a conscious action but as a function of his body needing to be rid of something, because what he had just seen required his complete attention. This is second 2. Delaney reset. His reset was fast. Faster than most men could accomplish after a miss at that commitment level, which told the serious observers in the front section something important. He was not rattled yet. He was processing. He moved his weight to his back foot and recalibrated the distance, shortening it by a step. His face was composed. A man with a shorter record might have rushed at this moment. He did not rush. He threw a right cross at the body, targeting the floating rib on the left side. The technique was legitimate. It was the punch of a 186-pound man who had broken 3 ribs in competition bouts using that exact motion, and the level of the target was, in theory, less protected by head movement than the face. In theory. This is second 3. Bruce Lee was no longer in the position the punch expected to find. He had moved left and forward simultaneously, which takes him off the line of the cross and inside the extension of Delaney's right arm into a range where the arm has no mechanical leverage remaining. He was standing now at a distance of 18 inches from Raymond Delaney's body, which is not a distance most fighters arrive at by design. It is a distance that most fighters arrive at by accident and immediately attempt to escape. He did not escape. Harold Yamada, the judo instructor in the front section, said later that he had actually reached forward with one hand at this moment and gripped the arm of the man in front of him. He said he did not know he had done it until he felt the fabric of the stranger's jacket under his fingers. He was, by his own account, trying to hold himself in place. This is second 4. At 18 inches, Bruce Lee's right hand moved. Not with speed, though the speed was there. It moved with precision, which is a different mechanism. A strike thrown with speed and poor mechanics transfers a portion of its energy in every direction. A strike thrown with precision transfers its energy in exactly one direction, which is through the target. His right hand traveled approximately 11 inches from its resting position to the center of Delaney's chest wall. That distance is sometimes called a 1-inch punch in the simplified retelling. The actual measurement was closer to 11 inches, and the simplification is a disservice to both men. Raymond Delaney moved backward 6 feet in a single moment. He did not fall. That is important and must be stated plainly. He did not fall, which means that what happened next was a choice his body made about how to absorb the force, and that the choice was the correct one. And that the correct choice was still not sufficient to keep him on the line he had occupied. He moved backward 6 feet. His left heel struck the floor first. His right hand dropped and then rose again as his body recovered its vertical. He stood. The arena was quiet in a way that 10,000 people rarely achieve. In that quiet, Bruce Lee walked toward him. He walked without urgency. The distance between them had opened to 12 feet, and he covered it in the manner of a man crossing a room to help someone who has dropped something. He was not stalking, he was not advancing with aggression, he was simply closing the space, because the space was irrelevant to him, and the closing of it was a courtesy. He raised his right hand. He extended it toward Delaney, open, palm up, which is not a combat gesture, it is an offered hand. Delaney looked at it. This is the moment that every person in that building who understood what they were watching would carry with them for the rest of their lives. Not the punch, not the distance work, not the slip. This moment, the offered hand, and the 3 seconds that Raymond Delaney took before he made his choice. His choice was to take it. He reached forward and gripped it, not in a shake, but in the specific grip of two men who have been in a serious exchange together and are now, through that grip, acknowledging the full weight of it. Bruce Lee leaned forward slightly. He said something. He said it at a volume of close to nothing. The nearest person who could have heard it was standing 7 feet away, and even at 7 feet, the words were below the level of clarity. What was said in those 4 seconds between those two men in the center of the Long Beach Arena floor has been reported as 3 different sentences by 3 different people who claim to have heard it. And the differences between the 3 versions tell you something true about the way a story gets carried through time. What is not disputed is this. Raymond Delaney nodded. He nodded once, slowly, in the way of a man receiving something that he already on some level knew to be accurate. Then Bruce Lee released his hand and turned and walked back toward the 7th row. Victor Santos, the former boxer in the 3rd row, would say later that he had wanted to reach out and touch Bruce Lee on the shoulder as he passed, to confirm in some physical way that what he had witnessed was real and not an artifact of the strange light in that building. He said he did not do it, because by the time the thought had completed itself, Bruce Lee had already passed. He said he looked down at his hands instead. He said he did not know what he was looking for. Harold Yamada reached forward and touched Bruce Lee's left shoulder as he came off the floor. One hand, briefly, Bruce Lee did not stop. He did not acknowledge it. He kept walking. Raymond Delaney stood at the center of the exhibition floor for a moment after Bruce Lee had returned to his seat. He stood in the particular posture of a man who is conducting an honest private inventory in a public place, which requires a specific kind of courage that is different from competitive courage and, by some measures, more demanding of it. He did not take the microphone again. He walked to the side of the floor and sat in the first available chair and looked at the floor of the arena for a period of time that no one could quite agree on afterward. Some people said 2 minutes. Some said closer to 5. He sat and looked at the floor, and what he was doing in that time was not performing shame. He was thinking. He was revising something. He gave an interview to a martial arts journalist named Peter Chin 6 weeks after Long Beach. The interview appeared in a regional publication with a circulation of approximately 3,400. In it, Delaney said that what he had encountered on that floor was not something he had been prepared for by his training or his record or his 7 months in Japan, and that the reason he had not been prepared for it was not a failure of his preparation, but a failure of his imagination about what was possible. He said that a man who cannot imagine a thing cannot train against it. He said it as a confession, not as an excuse. That distinction matters. He chose the honest accounting, which is the harder road and the more useful one, and which is why his name appears in this story rather than in the cautionary column where it might otherwise have landed. Peter Chin kept the tape recording of that interview for 31 years. He lent it to a documentary filmmaker in 1995. The filmmaker made no film. The tape was returned and spent 11 years in a storage unit in Pasadena before Chin's daughter found it after he died and transferred the audio to a format that a computer could read. She uploaded it without ceremony to a file-sharing archive on a Tuesday afternoon in 2008. It is still there. The audio is 47 minutes long. The section about Long Beach begins at the 22-minute mark. Delaney's voice is even throughout. He does not dramatize, he describes. The story that left Long Beach that evening traveled in the specific way that true stories travel among people whose lives have been dedicated to a craft, first from the serious observers in the front rows to their students, then from those students to regional competitors across 6 states, then from those competitors to anyone who trained seriously enough to deserve the story. By 1967, the essential facts of what had happened at Long Beach were known at serious martial arts academies from San Francisco to New York. By 1970, the story had shed several of its accurate details and accumulated 3 new ones that were not accurate, which is the tax that oral history always imposes on the truth. By 1975, it had crossed into film and television circles in Hollywood, carried there by the stunt community who have their own precise and unsentimental way of evaluating a man's capability, and who were not given to exaggeration because exaggeration on a film set carries physical consequences. The detail that mutated most significantly across the retellings was the nature of the private sentence. By 1971, the version circulating among West Coast competitors had Delaney weeping on the floor. He had not been on the floor. By 1973, the version in a Chicago dojo had Bruce Lee offering a formal apology for the embarrassment, which is so fundamentally inconsistent with everything known about the nature of the exchange that it could only have originated with someone who had not been present. The version that Peter Chin's tape recording preserved, 2 men, close, 4 seconds, 1 nod, is the version that the evidence supports. In 1971, a tournament official who had been present at Long Beach was giving a talk to a group of junior competitors at a dojo in San Jose. He was speaking about the nature of real skill versus the appearance of skill. He had been talking for 20 minutes when someone in the back of the room raised a hand and asked him whether he had ever seen someone truly demonstrate the difference. He said yes. He said he had seen it once in 1964 at Long Beach. He said it was the clearest lesson he had ever witnessed, and he had witnessed it without understanding it at the time, and it had taken him 7 years to understand it properly. He said he could not tell them what the lesson was in language. He said they would have to go and find it themselves, which is where all real lessons live. Raymond Delaney competed for 3 more years after Long Beach. His record during those 3 years was different from the 4 years before it, not in the number of victories, which remained high, but in their character. People who watched him compete in that period noted a quality they described variously as patience, or carefulness, or depth. He retired in 1967. He opened a school in the San Fernando Valley in 1969 and ran it for 22 years. Former students have described him as a rigorous and unsparing teacher who had one phrase he used more than any other when correcting a technique. The phrase was, "What did you assume?" He used it when a student failed at something because they had believed the situation to be something it was not. He used it when a technique failed because the student had expected a particular response that did not come. He used it as a question that demanded a truthful answer, and he waited for the truthful answer without impatience. Because he understood from his own experience that the truthful answer was not always the first thing a person said. He said, in an interview with a student who preserved it in a self-published memoir in 2003, that the most important night of his life as a martial artist was August of 1964 in Long Beach. He said it was important not because of what happened to him on the floor, but because of what he had been given access to in the 3 seconds that the offered hand was open in front of him. He said that in those 3 seconds he had been given a choice, and that the choice was between 2 versions of himself, and that he had chosen the correct one, barely, and not without effort. He said he was grateful for those 3 seconds for the rest of his life. He said it the way a man says a thing he has said quietly to himself many times before and is saying aloud for the first time, which is to say he said it without performance and without the need for anyone to respond to it. There is a version of that August evening in Long Beach that gets remembered as a story about a man who was humbled by a better fighter. That version is not wrong. But it is incomplete. The complete version is this: a man with a genuine record of excellence stood on a floor and made a claim that his record entitled him to make. He made the claim from pride, which is not the same as vanity. Pride is what a man feels when he has earned something real. His mistake was not the pride. His mistake was the assumption that what he had earned could be measured against something he had not yet seen without first going to see it. He saw it. He took the offered hand. He told the truth about it afterward to a man with a recorder, and the man preserved it, and the recording survived in a storage unit for 11 years, and it is still there. The lesson is not that certainty is wrong. Certainty, honestly earned, is one of the more valuable things a man can develop. The lesson is that certainty requires maintenance. It requires the ongoing discipline of testing it against reality rather than against memory. Because what you knew yesterday about what you are capable of, and what you knew yesterday about what someone else is capable of, are both claims that the world has the right to examine, and the world will examine them, and the examination will come at a time and in a place of the world's choosing rather than yours. A man's job is to be ready for that examination when it comes, and to take the offered hand afterward regardless of what the examination revealed. Next week we are going to tell the story of the afternoon in 1972 when a professional heavyweight fighter walked into a film studio in Hong Kong and asked to see Bruce Lee alone, and what the three people who witnessed the next 7 minutes reported when they were finally willing to talk about it 20 years later. That story begins with a locked door and ends with an apology that no one who was present ever repeated in public during that man's lifetime. We will tell you his name. We will tell you what he said. And we will tell you what Bruce Lee said back.